So programs have a collection of workbooks. I know Read Santa Clara does. Some programs aren't as fortunate, don't have as much budget as others. But usually there's an adult new reader collection, depending on the size of your library and your program, which includes fiction and nonfiction fiction materials. And there are audiobooks, and there's, as we've talked about, lots of workbooks and different resources, and of course, lots of computer-based things that people can work on for phonics and keyboard instruction and all kinds of programs that will track their progress if they have a desire to improve their computer literacy while they're learning phonics and so forth. And we've talked about the collections of learner writings that many programs have. Those are wonderful. Usually learners really love reading those because they can relate often to what the other learners are writing about. The adult new reader sections usually have materials that can be checked out, not just used during your session. So it's good to tour your learner through there, get them comfortable being able to check things out with their own library card. Usually the staff will, introduce you to that, but as you work with your learner, you can go back to that section and keep testing out different materials or making suggestions, finding things that the library has that dovetail with their goals and needs. So Kathy and I have talked about this a little bit, unashamedly plugging it at every opportunity. And we talk about finding things at the right level. And one of the things that we know, because Kathy and I did the research, was that there's very little published at the lowest level of 1 and 2, for adult readers that are not sort of childlike or dated or uninteresting, even in the way that they're produced. I remember when I was tutoring, a lot of the things seemed rather old. They were small paperbacks that didn't really feel good to hold in your hand. Sometimes the illustrations were kind of hokey. So it wasn't always exciting for the learner to pick things out. There were some good collections, like the biographies and things like that. But as programs have been around for a long time, they may have purchased everything that's available, and some of that is getting old. So Kathy wrote a grant and the state library funded it, and we were able to produce those 108 books that we told you about. So Kathy said she has one available to pull up on the screen, so I'm going to stop sharing. And these are what we call high-low books. So they're high interest for adults. They are topics that are not childish. They are topics and genres that were stated by the learners that we surveyed. They wanted to know about health and families, immigration, travel, nature, exercise and fitness. Can you think of any other, animals? Those were probably the top 10 genres that they chose, and there were others. This one is an amazing collaboration with the coordinator from Salinas wrote the book. One of her staff members was the one who had the baby. A friend of the mom took the photos. The hospital actually authorized the use of the photos. And it's a lovely book that really talks about family and all the excitement of being new parents. And as you can see, the text is minimal. There's a lot of white space on each page, but the photos are very clear and explicit. So they actually show what's being described in the text. So if a learner is having difficulty decoding a word, they can look at the picture and perhaps make an educated guess based on the context in the picture. And they're all about 25 pages long. And can you go to the tutor tips? So we've been talking up these tutor tips, and each book has about 1 to 2 pages of tutor tips in the back. And as I said earlier, they are specific to that book, but the actual strategy is not. So you can apply this to really any text if you take the strategy and then adapt it to the text that you're working with. So we really hope that you'll find these and explore different topics. There's 108 different titles. They are all on the Pro Literacy Education Network site as pleasure reading materials. So if the student has an account on Pro Literacy, they can log in and go straight to pleasure reading on the homepage.
And so just a couple of tips. Marilyn and I guess Todd at Pro Literacy created an instructional sheet about how to get on to the EdNet website and to access these books. So what yeah, on Padlet. And so what I do when I am using this, I use the books in my in-person class and my Zoom class, and I've actually used the books for higher level learners, intermediate level learners, and they really, enjoy them, and they're not too easy. They don't think they're too easy for them. And so on my for the Zoom class, I my internet capability is not great. And so I always go to the end of the book. And at the end of the book, unfortunately, it's not at the beginning, it's at the end, there is an icon where you can download the book. So that's what I did. I just downloaded The New Mom from the Pro Literacy website, and then I don't have to worry about buffering. I was having a bunch of problems with buffering because the photos are take a lot of bandwidth. So, for example, and I'll for those of you who won't be in the ESL, I'll just share this. So, for my beginning level learners, if we're having a lesson on fruits and vegetables, then we'll, work with the Oxford Picture Dictionary, we'll learn about fruits and vegetables, and then we might read the Farmer's Market book that Carrie Scott wrote. And we would read Bob's fresh picks for vegetables. Bob is a tutor, and he used to be the produce manager at a grocery store, and he wrote this great book. Marilyn and I learned things about how to pick the best produce. We're like, really? Didn't do that. And so, those then would reinforce the learning that we'd already had. And they're fun books, and you can, reinforce vocabulary and all kinds of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So did you talk about the PDFs, that they're downloadable PDFs? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So going back to.
Wait, sorry, could you just explain again how to get to those downloadable PDFs?
It's a bit of a process. So I could stay on with you after the meeting, or we could we will post the instructions on the Padlet. So there's 2 different ways to look at the books.
Yeah, so you can look at the books on Mixbook, which is the on-demand printer, but they're trying to sell you stuff. And so there's a bunch of advertisements. And so I would recommend looking at the books on Pro Literacy's EdNet website. And the tip is that if you go in as a learner, the process to access the books is much simpler. So that's all written out in an instruction sheet that we'll post on Padlet. Shoshi.
Oh,
you kind of answered my question, which is it's on pro literacy, and you said looking in it as a learner, but you had mentioned before, said a pleasure reading, was that?
yeah.
Yes, it's listed under
pleasure reading.
pleasure reading, and that's it's in the instructions. And again, I just to reiterate, I think I said in the first class that pro literacy, as time and funds allow, they will be translating the first 108 books into Spanish. And then we love that idea that they came up with. And so we included that in the grant costs. And so we have a line item for them to translate the 60 books into Spanish. So that can happen sooner. And ultimately, they hope to also do audio recordings for them.
Okay. So other non-traditional materials can be used, though that's not exactly non-traditional, but it is new and exciting. I think one of the non-traditional parts is that they have tutor tips in the back. The use of workbooks and traditional materials that your library probably already has. Those are great for practicing many skills. If your learner needs specific instruction with phonemic awareness and phonics, we really recommend using those really controlled text workbooks and programs that are designed for that. And your library staff would have that material or provide that material if the learner presents in the assessment as someone at that level. Where you're going to start off with phonemic awareness or phonics. But because our programs are learner-centered, we also want to introduce non-traditional materials. And as we've talked about with the learning styles, sometimes just that rote, copying and memorization and practice and drill, it isn't as effective for adults to learn as the hands-on, learner-centered activities that you can create with your learner. And the fun part of tutoring to me is really being creative and thinking about what could you bring in? What can you ask your learner to bring in? What can you use that you have at hand that could be really instructive? So non-traditional materials are just real life things. Like I said, it could be the purchase order that your learner has to read at work, and there's parts of it that are confounding to them. Or it could be, email, trying to learn to read and write and respond and delete and all the things that we do every day without thinking. There's many, many things that can be helpful and more enjoyable for your learner if you integrate some of that. Even if you do have to use workbooks or textbooks, mixing it up is a good thing. I always go back to this aha moment that I had when I was a new tutor. I was working at a community center for Parks and Rec, and I was observing a preschool program. And I watched the teachers herding this little group of 20 kids from the rug over to the craft table, out to the playground, back into the snack table, back to the rug. And about every 10 to 15 minutes, they were herding these kids from place to place. And, it hit me as I walked away that the attention span is what they were designing all of this around, because 3 and 4-year-olds don't have a long attention span. And not to be demeaning, but learners have a hard time focusing and concentrating. It's tiring for them to read for 30 minutes. It's better to give them a 10 or 15-minute chunk of reading and then maybe switch and do a 10 or 15-minute chunk of writing. And then, mix it up so you have 3 or 4 different things in your lesson plan so that you're practicing the reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So in addition to that, do it with familiar materials and things that they would like to work on. These are just some examples of common things that are still print-based, but might be more fun than just a textbook. And especially if, they have a need that's directly related to some of these things. So, maybe a person wants to get a job that's further from home, but they're going to need to take the bus. And you can work on mapping out that or figuring out how to upload a GPS program on their phone or whatever it would be, but just real life adult solutions. You know, many people don't use newspapers to look for jobs anymore, but you know, newspapers can be good for just circling words that you're working on, or even patterns in language. You know, if you take an article and you say, well, let's highlight all of the adjectives, or let's highlight all of the words that have GHT in them. Things like that just can be a little bit more fun and break up the monotony. And then we've talked about dictionaries a bit. The Oxford Picture Dictionary is a great one. Yeah, this is another one. I had a learner who wouldn't go to a restaurant unless the menu had pictures on it. And that was because he was too embarrassed to sit there, couldn't figure out what they were offering by trying to read it. So he would just pick his choice based on the photo. So it's good to, you know, if your learner wants to practice that kind of a skill, you can find menus online and, you know, practice some of that vocabulary and talk about, especially if your learner loves food. My learner and I always ended up talking about food. Online catalogs for purchasing, learning how to shop online. Many people don't know how to do that. Recipes are great if your learner likes to cook. You can exchange recipes, you can make things at home and exchange the food and then talk about it and talk about the vocabulary, and even use the measuring portion of a recipe as a math exercise. Many people have to use instruction manuals at home and at work. Those are good. So we have a little short video for you.
Non-traditional materials. These are all around you and can be a very helpful resource in tutoring sessions. So books and workbooks are not the only instructional materials you can use. Make tutoring sessions relevant and engaging for your learner by using non-traditional materials too. The following slides have some examples that may spark ideas for other materials you may be able to use in tutoring. Labels, whether they're nutritional or have medication or product information, can be an excellent resource. Some learners may find it helpful to practice writing a shopping list or a note. If you're both food lovers, read a recipe card and have the learner write a recipe for their favorite dish with your help. Read a menu together and discuss words the learner may not be familiar with. Pick a photo, or better still, have your learner pick one and practice descriptive writing or writing a caption. Read a bus schedule or a website about a place to plan a trip, real or imaginary. Take a magazine, pamphlet, or visitor guide and have your learner practice looking at titles, captions, skimming, and scanning. Job listings on paper or on an online site like Indeed.com may be helpful for some learners. Filling out forms are a part of daily life that some learners struggle with. Perhaps they can learn to fill out a sample form or bring the ones they need help with. Reading and responding to an email could help your learner practice their reading and writing skills. Games like Scrabble can make word work fun. Doing a crossword puzzle together is a good way to work on vocabulary. The choices are so many. Which non-traditional materials would you consider using? Encourage your learner to bring real-life materials to the session. Choose materials your learner may be interested in and are relevant to their goals. And always use materials if possible, like word games, to make learning fun. Thank you for listening.
So one of the things about non-traditional materials and goals is that the pace is non-traditional as well. You really don't know how long you're going to take to reach a goal until you start out. And that's why when we talked about goal setting, it's so important to have those small short-term goals really nailed down, because this particular learner and tutor is a real list that they came up with. It took the gentleman 6 months to find a job, and that must have been incredibly hard. But at the same time, he could see that each week, each time he met with his learner, he was gaining skills that he needed in order to reach that goal. So it's kind of fun right now to think about things that you have in your home, just even looking around the space where you're sitting right now, things that have text printed on them, and what you might have in front of you that could be a basis for a literacy activity, or something you could use as a trigger or a starting point for reading or writing. Does anybody have anything in front of them that they could actually quickly use and think of?
Hi, this is Jeannie.
Hi, Jeannie.
Hi. Um, I have a picture on the wall of the men in our family,
Oh,
and they're all doing different things. Some are sitting, some are pointing the way to the beach, some are on a train, some are at a parade. But it might be it's just like 6 different scenes that could start a conversation about what do you think is happening, or describe, or
oh, that's lovely.
how do
That's
they
a
feel, or something.
great idea. Even
Yeah.
something as simple as I have a calendar sitting in front of me, and I
Yeah.
have a learner who needed to learn how to write the days of the week and all the months. And
Mm.
that if you have a pretty calendar with some good photos, that could be something you could take in. Anybody else have anything fun? Oh, what's that? What's that, Jenny?
I'm unmuting, sorry. It's the Oakland Symphony,
Oh,
catalog for what they're
yeah,
performing
for
this season.
tickets. Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. Go ahead, Susan.
I don't have it in front of me, but when I last tutored, I tutored a what they called a wait group, people waiting for tutors.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people in it that were immigrants. They needed really, they were ESL students, and they were very interested in anything that was going on in the country right at that moment. And so what I would do is whenever a holiday came up, I found a children's book that wasn't like really, it didn't write down to them, and
Yeah.
we would read the page or two on the current holiday. They're very interested in voting, bringing in the ballot. And then I also, an interesting, just a very interesting little episode is I had a woman from an Asian country, I don't remember which one right now. She's trained to be an accountant in her country, working in Oakland Chinatown restaurant, washing dishes. And they weren't paying her on time. And I told her that was illegal. She was very interested in the laws around that. I was, I don't know what I did, but I managed to find something and bring it into her to let her know that her legal rights were being violated. Very, very interesting reading exercise for her.
Wow, that is so important, Susan. And, Bev Schwartzberg and I were talking yesterday. She's at the State Library, and, we were saying that literacy is a human right. It's a social justice issue. And often our learners are exploited, right? Native English and English language learners, especially those who are undocumented. And so I don't believe that programs ever ask. I never certainly ask my students if they're documented or not, but they are taken advantage of quite a lot. Where I live in the mountains, I know people will hire day laborers. They will do the work for 8 hours and then the people won't pay them sometimes.
Mhm.
Right. And so,
Wow.
part of what we can do is to further, the social justice aspect of literacy. And so that is a wonderful way that you did that. So good for you, Susan.
Okay, so whatever you do choose to use, remember to keep it relevant to your learner. Try and, as much as you can, plan together. Talk about what you're going to do in the coming lesson. Decide who's going to bring what materials to make it successful. You make sure you plan, because your time is precious and so is the learners. And so if you come in with no plan, your progress isn't going to be very good. You'll be wiggling around and winging it, and that's not fair to yourself or to your learner or to your program. So it's good to plan, and it's okay to have more on your plate that you can't finish, because you can always carry it over to your next meeting. Keep it simple and achievable, like the SMART goals, as Michelle said. It's always good to, keep it at a level where your learner can absorb it and process it, not feel overwhelmed. And then, finish each lesson with review. Review as you're going through it. What did we just cover? Do you understand? And then at the end, review some more. What did we learn today? What did you like about it? And what did you not like about it? Do you want to do it again? And another thing about lesson planning is things come up. So expect the unexpected with your learner. You can have the best plans, but then I had a day planned one time, and my learner walked in and said, I have to renew my driver's license by Friday. And he brought, we pulled up the DMV handbook and just started right in on the computer, because there was no time to do any of the other stuff we had planned. But he made it in time. He took the test, he got his driver's license, then we went back to plan A. So if you keep things simple and you plan digestible chunks of work for each time you meet, you will find that you're making successful strides. Do the plan once you make it, and then make it fun as much as you can. Obviously, there's parts that are work, but if you can mix up a little fun with each lesson, it certainly keeps things lighter and maybe more motivational. And then always at the end of every lesson, it's good to include that reflection and review and evaluation time. And then, talk about what you're going to do next. So the CLLS guideposts will be on the Padlet, and they take you step by step. It's excellent, very detailed description with examples of what steps you need to complete. And, hopefully you'll review these and get a feel for the best practice through them, and then incorporate this into your regular lesson planning. It's not like you have to have this at your fingertips every time you write a lesson plan out, or there are no lesson plan police, I always say. But in order to be accountable to your program and do those good monthly reports for them, it's helpful to follow these guidelines. So a form is always helpful to, work with your learner and kind of lay out a little game plan. This is just one example. This happens to be the Read Santa Clara form. And on the back of the form, we have space for reflection and evaluation and what we're going to work on next time. I used to just keep these forms. I'd write down the number of hours we spent up at the top, and everything's dated. So we could really see at the end of the month what we worked on, what we achieved, and what if there were any new goals set. We had those noted on the backs of these pages as well. There's a whole bunch of different, options. You could do this on a blank piece of paper, but maybe your program has a specific form they would like you to use. If not, this could be used as a template, and this will be on the Padlet.
And I'd just like to say that it's best practice to actually share the objective of the lesson with your learner, right? So that they're, again, you're partners in learning. You are not the font of all knowledge, and you are sharing this experience. And so it's very helpful to your learner if you say, okay, this is what I'm hoping, we'll be able to cover today, and this is why we're doing it. This is the importance of that. And so have that conversation with them, and that helps them take accountability for, and oopsie, and I'm sorry, my cats decided that this would be an excellent time to assault me, so they were just completely taken over my desk, and so sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, so it helps them. Okay, so now we want you to see a case study and to come up with some ideas for lesson planning for this student, again, a real student in a CLLS program. And so I know this is a lot of information about Anna, and we have several slides with the information on it. And so I'll read it, and please read along with me. So Anna is a 32-year-old woman from Michoacan, Mexico. She's been in the US for 14 years, and she speaks English well, although she does have an accent, and sometimes she doesn't really know all the words that she would like to use. She has 3 children. One is in junior high, one is in elementary school, and she has a toddler as well. So Anna works full-time at a hotel as a housekeeper, and her days off are usually Monday and Tuesday, but sometimes she has to work other days, and she's called in at short notice, and that can really affect her tutoring schedule. Sometimes she has to cancel her tutoring sessions. She starts work early in the morning so that she can pick up her kids from school, and a relative takes care of her toddler. So Anna did have 6 years of schooling in Mexico, but that was a long time ago. She doesn't really remember that much about learning and what she learned. Her children encouraged her to join the library literacy program because they know that it would be valuable for her to speak and write English better, and they also would love for her to be able to help them with their homework. So Anna reads at about a 3rd grade level in English, and she has less experience with writing, and so writing is more difficult for her than reading, speaking, and listening. Her work demands that she have some reading and writing skills, and so she needs to be able to order supplies for housekeeping and to leave notes for her boss about issues that she has encountered in the rooms in the hotel. But sometimes she doesn't have the vocabulary, or she doesn't know how to spell the words that she needs to use in those notes, and that makes her self-conscious and not very confident, and also makes her not able to really advance in her career. So Anna's long-term goal is that she would like a better job at that hotel or at a hospital, and maybe as an administrative assistant. She does know how to use a computer, but she never learned how to touch type. And so that is something that she'd like to be able to do. And she wants to be able to be confident in using email and to use the internet. So when she came to the program, her goal was to have a better life for her children. But now she's been thinking about her own life goals and thinking that maybe she'd like to earn a GED. So this is a sample of Anna's writing. And so she says, I would like the following skills for my kids. So please notice, is there some invented spelling that Anna has come up with that you can understand the meaning of because she has sounded it out and it, you can figure it out. Does she have any capitalization or punctuation issues, any spelling issues, any grammar issues? But the main thing is she able to convey her ideas in writing? So I would like the following skills for my kids: type well, to swim, to write clear, and anyone can be able to read it. I think these tools are very important to them. I would like my 3 kids to be able to talk well Spanish and English. It's one of the skill I want for them. They might have more job opportunity. Okay. So that was a lot, but thinking about this, what are Anna's goals? And what short-term goals will help Anna reach her long-term goals? What strategies would you include in a lesson plan for Anna? And what materials might you use? What are your ideas?
I need to reread.
So a long-term is she wants a better job.
Mhm.
That's in the chat, Michelle says. So
Mhm.
I think you talked about vocabulary related to her job as a
Mhm.
short-term goal. Another Karen says she wants to provide a better life for her kids and wants a better paying job. She could get help learning how to type. That would be a short-term goal, is getting her typing skills up to speed.
And most CLLS programs have touch typing programs. I know Mavis Beacon was a very popular one, but there are other ones.
Nicole says, write clearly so anyone can understand.
Mhm.
So obviously be working on that. She wants to help her children with homework.
Mhm.
Computer and email use would be some of the shorter to midterm goals.
Yeah.
Email could be short, computer in general could be more mid as you get, I mean, that's an endless, we're all still learning computers. We can't keep up. Improve writing for work-related duties would be a midterm.
Mhm. And so, maybe you could email with Anna, practice email. You could do some lessons when you're together, and then for home practice, you could email each other.
Yeah, I like this one, a personal word bank. If any of the tutors that are new don't know what that is, just new vocabulary that she's gathering. She could keep in her own notebook that's called a personal word bank. It's almost like a dictionary of new vocabulary, and then all related to her work terminology, and a
Yeah.
practice supply list, practice writing notes for work.
All great. And some people keep those in a notebook. Some people, again, who are tactile or kinesthetic learners, keep it in index cards. And Michelle.
Yeah, so for short-term goals, I would even, in my personal opinion, I would even go as far as going over the alphabet and reviewing the sounds of the letters because, as a native Spanish speaker myself, some of them are different. So I would even go as far as reviewing the alphabet and then building from there, like the word banks, and go over some phonics so that her pronunciation, so that she's more confident when she's speaking. And then she can transfer that over to her writing as well.
That's a great idea. And yeah, don't assume that your learners, even if they speak English pretty well, don't assume that they necessarily know the sounds that all of the letters make, especially as you get to the end of the alphabet, right? X is really difficult, V and W, as Z can be difficult. And as Michelle said, it is almost more challenging for Spanish speakers, I think, than other like Mandarin speakers who have different characters and a different alphabet, because it's the same letter it looks like the same in Spanish, but it has an entirely different sound. And so now you have to unlearn what the sound is in Spanish and learn what it is in English. And that is a huge challenge for students. And Alma.
To add to that, I am having that problem with the learner, Spanish speaker. The I and E is literally flipped in sound to the Spanish. So it's like, undo that. Don't think of that.
It is. And, we'll talk about that next Tuesday when we have our 4-hour segment on ESL. And so when does that become a problem? When do you address it? When do you not? And the short answer is when it causes confusion, when there is another word that it has a different meaning, right? And so when meaning is compromised, right, you really need to address that. But very challenging, yeah. And the S instead of S, right? So putting a vowel before S in Spanish as well, yeah. Okay, these are some great ideas. Thank you so much for sharing them. And I know it's hard to keep that all in your head. Marilyn, probably next time we would want to put Anna's profile maybe on Padlet and have that be
Have
an
them read it
assignment.
in advance.
Just
Yep.
occurred to me right now to do that. So
Okay, Anna's okay.
all right. And so, yeah, we wanted to include just a little very brief discussion about AI and lesson planning. And so I've just toyed around with this a little bit in my lesson planning for my own classes. And there are probably many of you who have done more about this or have used ChatGPT or any other AI I don't even know what you call them, systems to use this. So the question is, how might you use AI to create a lesson plan for Anna? And could you please share your ideas in the chat, and then how might you teach Anna to use AI to help her reach her goals?
Mhm.
First of all, I guess, is anybody quite savvy with AI and using AI in your own work, or as a tutor or as a literacy staff member? Or is this new to all of us? It's pretty new, right?
I can chime in. We just had a tutor roundtable yesterday where I get together tutors and they share tips and resources and successes and challenges. And there was a tutor, who went through an earlier CLLS online training with you folks, Linda, and she was very inspired by your talk about AI. And so she shared with us how she's been using it to write little stories at a controlled vocabulary. So she'll say, please write me a kindergarten or first grade level story that uses the following homonyms or that uses the following words. And she says it's not always good off the bat, and sometimes she has to rephrase it. So she'll do that, like, or write me a poem, or write me a rap, or give me an introductory level biography of Gavin Newsom, because he's dyslexic and her learner is dyslexic. So, and all that stuff is on the internet. So it just scrapes up some biographical info about Newsom, puts it into an easier level. I did warn her that you need to check for hallucinations because AI will make stuff up. So she's having a thrilling time with it, with her learner. And personally, I use it sometimes to simplify email that I'm sending to learners. My assistant wrote an email to ESL learners about a program we were having that was had a lot of complicated vocabulary. So I took her whole email and I threw it in ChatGPT and I said, could you rewrite this for me at a third grade level? And it also wasn't perfect, but it got us along the way of stripping it down, simplifying it, and then I went from there.
That's a great idea. And how I might use that is even the lowest level News4U articles have always been too high for my learners. And so I would rewrite those by hand. And so I could now just, yeah, and that took me quite a bit of time, I could just put that text into ChatGPT and ask it to lower the level. And yeah, I might need to tweak it and, do some nuanced changes, but it's going to save me time, and it probably is going to come up with a really great product. So thank you. That's great. And I remember Linda because I had no idea that Governor Newsom was dyslexic. And so she told us that, and she shared an article with us. And so I was really grateful to her for that.
There is a great YouTube video of him interviewing, I think the boy is 13. The boy is dyslexic and requested an interview with him, probably for a book report or something. And they have this one-on-one, and it's a beautiful YouTube. He goes into great detail about how he compensates, and it's really helpful. So in the chat, Kathy, too, Stefania said she makes handouts for her English conversation class, such as sentence frames of vocabulary words. And Ben said he taught a student to use AI to help her draft a talk. That's fantastic. And
wow, Ben, what kind of talk was it?
Oh, she had to give a talk, and she chose to talk about Proverbs. So we used AI to generate a list of Proverbs, and then she chose one. And then she told it to I know it sort of sounds like cheating, but she had it then draft a little 2-minute talk about this one proverb. And I was very careful to say, you got to put all this in your own words. You can't just read it out.
Yeah, and you know what? I had a discussion, and that's so cool. That is so cool, and that's a very important point. You have to then make it your own, right? This gives you ideas and starting points, but you do need to address the fact that in American culture and in the United States, that plagiarism is illegal, right? That we value original thought and ideas and expression and so you need to give credit to those, or you need to take an idea and make it your own, use your own words and put your own spin on something. And that is also an important conversation to have with our learners. And again, in many cultures, the idea of plagiarism is a new one. And so that is always, especially for those who are going to be going to college or, some sort of institution where plagiarism is a real problem. But that's super cool, Ben. Thank you for sharing that.
Stephanie from Oakland said Bing Creator is a great one for creating funky flashcards and coloring pages that feature words they are learning.
Bing Creator.
Bing Creator.
Ooh, thank you.
That's the Microsoft, is Bing the Microsoft version? There's so many tools. So we also on the Padlet have a little short, I don't know if it's a tutorial, it's a slide deck from a workshop that was done in Salinas. And that was what triggered the whole conversation that we had in our June training. Was that Salinas was on board, encouraging their tutors to use it, encouraging their learners to use it. And Kathy and I are like, what? We haven't jumped in that pool yet. So we're trying to be open-minded and learn as fast as we can. And so we have permission to share that Salinas slide deck with you, and it'll be on the Padlet if you want to just see what they taught in their workshop. Okay, yeah.
And I start teaching again mid-September, and I am so excited. I just dipped my toe in this because I had attended a workshop for adult educators about using AI, and I was pretty skeptical. I just wasn't sure. And, how could this possibly be better than something that I, with 30 years of experience, could create? And so it was Thanksgiving, and I said, I put in all my very, very specific prompts, and I said, create a lesson on Thanksgiving. And I was pretty blown away by the the complexity and the quality of what was produced. So, and you said it's sort of like cheating. Well, remember when everybody thought calculators were kind of like cheating, right? And so we have to say it is a tool to help us, right? It is not meant to replace original thought or original words. And so you use it as a tool. So unique. Go
Oh,
ahead, Shoshi.
I think one of the fascinating things that people can, and this might affect a little bit more on the ESL side, can really benefit with the support of the AI. I had mentioned the Goblin tools in the chat. It's one where you can type in what you want to say, and then you can pick different categories of tone, formality, and informality, and it's just a button. And
Oh.
so, and the level at which you wanted to change and transform the phrasing. And
Wow.
so, in understanding, you can have one phrase and it will recreate it in different tones for you, more even tones of more polite or more direct, or so it's I think a great tool, not to use it for in substitute for their production of words, right? But for them to understand and use in terms of comprehension. I think that is
Great.
and easily create it, something and not have to spend hours in the back.
Absolutely. And if we had had 2 hours for the writing part of this workshop, we would have talked about, when, you would want to discuss with your learner that, when you're writing, you're always thinking about audience, right? Who are you writing for? Because I know that, if I'm writing for my peers, it's going to be very different than if I'm writing to people who are new to the concepts, right? And tone is also something, what is your tone? So that's very cool because you could have the same text written in, informal or, slang, and you could do compare and contrast, which is always a great critical thinking activity. And that's a wonderful way that you could talk about tone and audience in writing.